This is the Venturing Angler Podcast. I'm Tim Harden. This episode, we're talking with Dan Rooster Leavens about fly fishing travel. Rooster's been all around the world, and he's been to a number of destinations. Some of them he can't stop going to. We'll find out why. Let's chat with Rooster. All right, we're here with Dan Rooster Leavens. Dan, welcome back to the Venturing Angler Podcast.
Howdy. Always a pleasure.
So the last one was fun. I think you were driving around in a truck. You were in Twin Bridges, Montana. And for those who didn't listen to that one or who might not be familiar, what do you do? What's your day job?
Well, a lot of people would refer to it as like I'm a fishing guide and outfitter, but basically I make sure that everybody's having a good time.
Yeah, that's well put. And so you're in Twin Bridges, Montana. Does Montana have good fly fishing?
It didn't this afternoon. This morning was pretty good, but this afternoon Montana did not have good fly fishing.
So there are a variety of different rivers around you and still waters. What are some of the rivers around your neck of the woods?
Right around Twin Bridges, Tim, there's five that we kind of, that they're our bread and butter. The Jefferson, Big Hole, Beaverhead, Ruby, Madison, all the big names, all the Blue Ribbon, Southwest Montana rivers they're within a 30-minute drive of my shop, which is pretty handy in the morning.
One of my first, I think it was my first trip to Montana. Twin Bridges was on my list of places to go. I couldn't believe how cool it was there, how much great fishing was around. Fell in love with the Madison right away. And that brings me to the question of, why do you travel so much? So for those who aren't familiar, you travel a lot. And there's times where I'm like, how could he be traveling so much, this spring when Montana has so much to offer? What is it that takes you out of the state of Montana to destinations throughout the world?
Well, it's been a journey, I guess. And of course I love it here. This is my home. This is where my daughters are being raised. My bird dogs live here. Old boy told me one time, I asked him where home was. He said, well, home's where you keep your bird dog. Uh-huh. So Twin Bridges is home. And it's just a fabulous little town. It's outside of the sprawl of Bozeman and even Ennis. Our population hasn't changed in 20 years. It's still about 300. But I'm going to tell you, playing in the winters, it's a pretty desolate, quiet place. And I'm a social animal. I got to be around people to be happy. And through fly fishing and guiding and outfitting and so on and so forth, in Montana, I don't know, maybe a dozen years ago, the question, where are we fishing next, Rooster, kept coming up. I kept hearing it. And of course, I guided for steelhead on the Washington coast for 20-something years. And as that petered out, as the steelhead runs dwindled and the pressure from urban Seattle increased, I just wasn't happy. I didn't enjoy it anymore. About that same time, maybe 15 years, I don't know really the time frame on it, but like in typical guide life, just the other day could be anywhere from yesterday to 10 years ago. But I just suddenly fell in love with saltwater fishing. Cut my teeth down in Ascension Bay. I guess my first daughter had just been born, so that was 17 years ago. And it's grown. I found another niche that I'm happy with and look forward to, and put a tremendous amount of effort in to make sure that everybody's happy. And it's went from, saving up and going on a vacation to, God, I think I sent you a list today. Actually, I got 15 hosted weeks of travel in the next 12 months.
That's crazy. I
So
first, sorry.
it it's been an evolution, and it's grown, and I think it's important that everybody realizes what they have in their bag of tricks. And in my bag of tricks, I work well with others, and going to strange places and working with the guides and getting the staff and the managers and the liaisons and the airports, and then of course the customers. I found a way to make a little money in the wintertime, which, back to your original question, why do I leave? It's kind of hard to be a trout guide, at least in this corner of Montana, in February, March, and even April. We receive a tremendous amount of precip and snow, and the weather sucks, and kind of hard to put people on a plane and bring them here during that time frame. So I didn't have my hand forced. I guess I just love to do it, but started doing more and more saltwater trips, and boom, here I am, and I, I can't wait for the next one. They're some of the most enjoyable times of the year for me.
I didn't realize you guided in Washington. I first became familiar with you in 2013. I think because of the film Waypoints.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one of the destinations they visit in that film is southeast Alaska, the Tongass National Forest, where you were guiding.
Correct.
For how long did you do that?
Uh, well, this year being 2022, I started doing it in 1989, and this
Wow.
was the first year I didn't go back and guide in April with Travis, my best friend. And it felt a little bit like I didn't get to go home this year. To be honest with you, I love Southeast Alaska,
Hmm.
but that led to, when I worked in Seattle on the waterfront, I started guiding out in Forks on the Hoh and all the Quileute rivers, the Salduck, Kalawa, Bogashil, down on the Queets, hump tulips, and I got a very, very good understanding of coastal steelhead runs in the 90s before the pressure was there. I started out gear fishing for them, and as I got a little handier with fly fishing and teaching people how to do it, uh, boom, I had a 60-day season booked for, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16 years.
Hmm.
And as the runs dwindled and I fell in love with permit fishing, I just transitioned into getting out of winter. As I've gotten older, I don't enjoy the cold. It's hard on me. Um, it just fits my persona to be in flip flops and shorts and have a cocktail
What
and
took
talk about saltwater fishing.
Right? What took you to Southeast Alaska in the first place?
Um, when I graduated high school in '89, my grandfather wouldn't let me join the Marine Corps, as he'd had two sons that had lost their lives in a couple of the wars, the Vietnam conflict and Korean conflict. I thought I was just going to join the Marine Corps, and he pulled me aside one day, and I was pretty tight with Grandpa Ray. He taught me to fly fish 50 years ago, really. And he said, "Well, you can do whatever you want, but you're not joining the Marine Corps."
Hmm.
So I explored other options. We on a dairy farm, and certainly didn't have any money for college. So I joined the Coast Guard, and ended up stationed in Sitka, Alaska, down in southeast, and did a 4-year stint as a rescue swimmer, and learned a lot about life in that time frame. And as a result, that's when I really started guiding, because I didn't make enough money to pay for the boat that I bought. So I had to start charging everybody to go fishing.
Right. Well, I want to get to the flip flops on the party, and I think a good transition would be that I don't totally remember that scene in Waypoints. I've been there. I remember a good fish being caught. and some cool music in that scene. But what I remember the most is it looked like a good time. I think you guys were shooting icebergs with a gun to get. Am I right about this? To get ice for drinks.
Well, yeah, you got to have cocktail ice, and the store bought ice melts too quickly. So
so so it was the winters in Montana that really brought you from cold waters to the tropics.
that's really a simple answer to it. And well, it's probably more than just that. The challenge of saltwater fishing at that time in my life and career brought a new aspect to fly fishing, and I just fell in love with it. I love the guides. I love being the middleman between a guide that barely speaks English and I barely speak Spanish, so we can communicate better than most, I would say, especially with all the guides in Mexico. So you're the liaison between them and then your customer, who I really want to have a good time, so that he goes back next year. And through it all, I get to catch a few fish, which is fine. I quite honestly kind of know when to pick my days and pick my shots after enough time of watching it done wrong. Well, it's just grown, and my relationship with two guides in particular, Will Flack in Belize and Jorge Tut in the Yucatan at Playa Blanca Lodge. Those guys are my brothers. I mean, we talk 3-4 times a week just about fishing year round. So if you do the math on that, why would I want to sit here and shovel snow when I could be hosting groups of anglers at two of my favorite people that walk the planet's lodges and spend a week or 2 weeks in some cases, sometimes 3, with what I consider my family.
Yeah, it's funny when you were talking about that. I was thinking about, I don't know if it was January. This year I was going for a lot of. I'm in Montana too. You know that already, but for those who are listening, um, I'd go for these walks at night, and a couple times it was -20, and the wind was blowing, and I'd put this Patagonia face mask on. It's like this wool thing, and when I'd get home, the mouth area was frozen because of
Yeah.
like the condensation, I guess, coming out of my mouth. Um, but I remember one of my buddies went and it was trying to get me to go down to Will's place and fish in Belize at Belize Permit Club, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna make it. And I was going for these walks, and boy,
It's brutal here in the
it's
wintertime.
yeah, and Belize sounded pretty good.
Yes. Yes.
um,
A few people have asked me, how and why, and the shortest answer I've come up with is, if you decide you're going to hang that shingle up and you're going to fish for a living, and to all the up and coming guides that are listening to this podcast, once you say you're going to fish for a living, you actually have to do it.
yeah,
If you take the winter off and don't work, you won't have any money left. You'll be stuck in that cycle of, you've blown all your tips by New Year's, and then you got to live like a hermit until the first guide trip in May. You know, delving into saltwater and hosted travel, it actually provides a bit of income.
right.
So if you're going to say you're a fishing guide, you got to kind of fish year round, and that's hard to do in any other place than, I think, the Florida Keys is probably a year round fishery, where
Let's
you can take people's money to go do it. Yeah, you can go fishing here in January, but I'm not going to charge somebody to go do it.
right, and they get paid pretty well down there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The
So,
sorry,
no, go ahead.
I don't remember.
I don't either.
Well, you mentioned you sent a list of your hosted trips to me today, and all but one of them is saltwater focused. And I want to dive into the salt here in a second. But before we do, what are all the destinations you've been to? You know,
Um,
freshwater, saltwater. Where have you been? I know you're probably not going to remember all of them. So it goes, but
Yeah. I mean, right off the top of my head, of course, I did, let's see, I did 8 hosted weeks in the Yucatan in Mexico this past winter between Casablanca, Playa Blanca, the Belize Permit Club, and X-Flats Lodge. For whatever reason, everybody wants to permit fish now, and they want to do it with people they know. So it's been pretty conducive to doing hosted trips in the last, let's say, post COVID, in the last 2 years since travel happened. And now you don't even have to wear a mask on a plane, so that's pretty nice. Um, so the Yucatan, I was in the Seychelles at Cosmolito Atoll in March for just 1 week, which I don't like going there for 1 week. It's an awful lot of travel. So next year, coming in 2023, I have back-to-back trips on Farquhar and Poivre, which makes a little more sense to fly halfway around the planet. At least get 2 weeks of fishing in. So there's Seychelles, Mexico, Will Flack's place down in Hopkins, Belize Permit Club. I kind of don't feel like I can't celebrate New Year's knowing I didn't go fish with Will for a week or two. I think last year I went 4 times.
Yeah.
He's, that if you haven't done it, you just need to do it. He is, in my opinion, one of the best, and there aren't many of the best. So, well, I'll just leave that at that. His head doesn't need to be any bigger than it already is. And then let's see. That's kind of the saltwater end of things. A little bit of New Orleans thrown in there. I'm good for a redfish trip or two a year with Scotty and Nick or Greg Deeney. And I try and play the weather card on that a little bit more than just booking a trip and going and saying we're here. I keep a couple of different dates open with those guys. And when the weather starts shaping up right, I call my A team and here we come. We do New Orleans and try and stay out of jail and go catch some redfish. And then the freshwater end of things, Brazil in the Ken Jam has become a pretty nice crowd pleaser. Southeast Alaska steelhead and Washington Coast steelhead. Even though I don't work there full time anymore, I try and get over there and fish with my buddies. For a week or so, maybe in February. That's when the big fish come in. Try and fill 2 or 3 boats up and get the band back together. And, as sad as it is to see the plight of the West Coast steelhead, I'm surprised that there'll probably never be a year I won't go do it. Those rivers are magical. Those fish are magical. And having spent so much time in Forks, I wouldn't feel right if I didn't go sit in the rain and get real cold for a couple of days.
I went up there once. It changed my life. It's amazing up there.
Yeah, Forks is the Olympic National Park is
Forks, yeah.
nothing short of amazing.
I haven't been there. I meant the Tongass. That place was.
Well, that one too. Yeah, both of them are. We're just at a point in our lives where, as humans, as people, we have just jacked up about everything we can jack up on this planet, and to go to a place like Cosmolito Atoll or the Tongass National Forest or the Olympic National Park, where human impact has really been minimalized, and to see the effects it has on the ecosystems, it's encouraging. At least we have that left.
Yeah, Tongass was a close one recently, but one of the things I remember about the trip was every day I saw more whales than people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
It's wild.
Humpbacks, killer whales that we've seen graze, sperm whales come off the coast of Sitka. That's a very unique place.
Yeah. So you mentioned Will Flack and you don't want him to get a big head or something like that. And the first thing I thought of was the fact that he has a tattoo of a permit on his neck. And that is the truth for those who don't know. That is true. And I think he actually might have 2 permit tattoos on his neck. It might say, does it say Palmetto on the other side?
Yeah, I think it does. But whoever he had do the tattoo, I think had probably been drinking. You kind of got to look at it.
Well, anyway, I've noticed a lot of people who are obsessed with steelhead are also obsessed with permit, which seems like an illness of some kind because that can be torture, both of those species. What attracts you to fish for species like steelhead and permit?
Well, undoubtedly, there's a certain amount of self-loathing that you have to just
Right.
accept
Yeah.
when you delve into those worlds. And I think what happens is we all like a challenge. I'm a fisherman and a hunter, and the thrill is in the chase. Well, with those two species in particular, you're going to chase them, and you're going to chase them to some pretty far and away unique destinations. And every now and then they show up to the party and eat your fly, and everything makes sense. Up until that point, nothing makes sense. Like, why am I here?
Right.
These fish don't bite. There's no steelhead. The rivers are blown out, or the rivers are too low, or perfect conditions, but the run of fish isn't there. And then you transplant yourself to the flats of Belize, and why won't they bite? Oh my God, they were here yesterday on the same tide. And those fish didn't bite, and then one shows up, and you just, whether you're swinging for steelhead or casting to a tailing permit, it takes about one a week to keep my ADD at a minimum. And there's very few fish that can do that. So many other fish are super cooperative. Those are the two that are probably the least cooperative, and at least bring you to the coolest destinations to try your hand at the sport that we all love and live and breathe, fly fishing. So I guess in not so many words, to me, it's the high court of fly fishing. And recently, I just spent a week down in the Keys fishing for those freaking non-biting ocean tarpon with Greg Deeney and Brett Greco, and fed a couple of them, fed enough to keep to stay interested, but they're going to cost me an awful lot of money. That's an addicting fishery as well. There's nothing more challenging than those three fish. GTs are great, but hell, quite honestly, most of them bite. So you try and get in these fish's brains, and why don't you bite? I just tied this immaculate looking fly that looks like everything you eat. No, they don't eat it. Mainly because there's line attached to it, is what I attribute it to.
When I caught my first tarpon, I think I had an out of body experience.
Exactly.
Like really,
Yes. Uh
like I left the earth.
huh. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I departed this world as we know it when it ate. As soon as it ate, I went somewhere else. And then
You're looking down on yourself.
you are. And like your body's doing it. It's like, fighting a fish or whatever. Um, and then when it was all done, I was like, I told the guide, I was like, yeah, I need some time alone. And I just sat there, thought about things for a while. It's bizarre. And then
It
like,
is.
and then you think like, all right, do I need to change everything in life and move to the Keys? You know?
Well, you bring up a valid point. Like, that is a dilemma. When we find these fisheries and these fish that become addicting, I mean, let's face it, they're addicting. How much of that addiction do you want to take? Do you want to have your one cocktail a night? You're gonna, how many Moscow mules are you gonna have? The sky's the limit on these saltwater fisheries. And as you get to know the guides and the lodges and the areas that you like to go, the same metamorphosis happens as when people come here to the Stonefly in Montana. They become your friends, and then they become better friends, and then they become your family, and then they're bringing your daughters gifts, and you're bringing them presents. Even though a lot of the Mexicans, they just sell that shit.
it's it's funny that you mentioned that. I've lived as soon as I was able to. I got out of the East Coast and have lived in the Rockies or around the Sierras ever since. And I've noticed since I've been in Montana, anytime like you speak to anyone and it comes up that you're in Montana. So I could be like on a customer service call with, you know, Verizon. The person's like, "Oh, when I was 9," and they tell you
Right.
about.
I went to Yellowstone.
I know all the time, and so like anytime I've got to like make a customer service call and they're like asking me to confirm my address, they're like, "Hey, I went to Yellowstone in 1983, and let me tell you, it's like so important. You know, something happens in places like Montana, Alaska, Belize, Mexico, and it's powerful. I'll say this: I'm not the one who's supposed to be talking. I try to avoid it, but on the podcast. But you got
Well,
me.
if you don't talk, then I have to talk. So I like when you talk.
I don't want people to get to know me. Just kidding. I don't know if I've ever said this on this podcast, but I was invited to go to the Keys. I don't know, a long time ago now, 10 years ago, I guess. And that's where I wanted to go. And then the trip got changed and it was to the Everglades. And I was so disappointed. I didn't want to go to the Everglades. All I thought about was like mosquitoes and alligators and, you know, swampy bass and, you know, what's the name of that Sasquatch they got down there?
Wait a minute. Yeah, I was trying to follow along there. And I took a sip of my Moscow Mule and I set it down, and you were talking about Sasquatch.
Isn't there? They've got Skunk Ape. They've got Skunk Ape down there. Anyway, I didn't want to go to the Everglades because I'm thinking about all these things. I didn't realize what an
Wait a minute. There's a Sasquatch in the Everglades?
You didn't know that?
No. See, this is. No, I did not.
By the way, I have to say this, and I have not said this publicly yet. And if I regret saying this later, I'll address it in a special episode of the Venturing Angler podcast. There is a lot of like Bigfoot stuff in Montana, and having spent a lot of time in Northern California, we all know Bigfoot is in Northern California, Southern Oregon. And so I don't know what all this stuff here is. I'm just saying.
Well, you just get out and get walking around, and maybe you'll find.
By the way, I said Bigfoot. I meant to say Sasquatch because I've heard there's Bigfoot is a heated word in the Squatch community.
Well, if Sasquatch, as you refer to him as, is like all other Californians, clearly he's in Montana now.
That's funny.
So put that in your theory of how he got here.
Yeah, that's pretty good. What was I talking? Oh yeah,
We don't know.
The Everglades. It's funny. I'm the sober one. Just kidding.
I'm definitely not.
When I got there, I fell in love with the place, and I went year after year after year for I can't remember 4, 5, 6 years, obsessed, and you know the place is just so special that yeah, I went there and I'm like, okay, do I need to figure out how to finance a Hell's Bay or whatever?
Right.
But permit, I was in the Keys and some permit went by and the guy was like, you know, 11 o'clock, 40 feet, up too late. And I'm like, man, this like that was quick. Because in my mind, it was like a poster where the permit is tailing and you deliver a nice, perfect cast at 70 feet. That game is hard.
Yes, sir.
So is it part of it the challenge for you?
For me, it is. It is. And I don't know. Somehow I have days I cast, you know, like Dobson and I were talking, fished with John Dobson today, the Scott rep. And of course, we talked saltwater fishing while we were catching some really spectacular brown trout. And I guess that's by default. We all when something's good, we start thinking about how we can make it better or what's next. And of course, Dobson spends a lot of time in the Keys, and I kind of forgot where I was going with that. But the challenge, the chase, the thrill of watching one of those fish tail up and eat your fly, it's the equivalent of a big brown, you know, eating a salmon fly that's presented just properly, and a GT that comes crashing through a wave to eat. There's certain moments in fly fishing that are just burned into your memory bank, and a tailing permit that eats your fly is one of them. And I don't think anybody will argue that with me. Um, I'm guilty as charged as being like a drug dealer that has gotten some of my favorite people in the world addicted to permit fishing. And admittedly, it's a little bit of a I'm a bit selfish because I make money bringing them permit fishing, but they love it.
You're like the drug dealer that introduced them.
Yeah, first trip's free, Justin. Why don't you just come and join me on this and help me host the group? Oh, by the way, we're going to book Will Flack for the whole week on the mothership, and the check's in the mail.
Right.
Like, he doesn't even question it.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I don't think anybody's a great permit fisherman. I mean, Jose and Punta Allen, he's great. He won the Merkin this year. Justin Ray, clearly he's great. Nathaniel Linville's clearly great. We all suck at some point. You can't be great at it all the time. What you can be great at is enjoying the moment, right? And being part of it, and understanding that you're not going to catch every one of them, no matter how good you are at it. And then there's days when a customer from Iowa pile casts on top of a 25-pound fish, and the fish eats the fly through the fly line, and you see that happen, and it's changed his life forever. And my jaw just hits the floor. They'll give you little bones. Those fish they'll keep you on the string. They're drug dealers themselves. As far as if you ask me, it's like a little cartel of fish. And you got your permit, your steelhead, your GTs.
Right.
They keep you. They string you out. Your tarpon. They string you out. They keep you interested just enough where you need to have some money set aside to go do that shit every winter and get out of winter. Go get a suntan, burn your top of your feet. If you're like me, you burn the top of your head real bad, and your ears, you look like a lizard half the year. And drink too much tequila or rum or whatever it might be. If it wasn't for those fish, we wouldn't do it.
Fish will drive you crazy. I was I was on Armstrong's a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I like dusted off a 4-weight and got some tiny flies. And I'm casting to this nice rainbow, and I'm really like, I'm not screwing up. Like, everything was dialed. I was so pleased with myself. And it wouldn't eat. And now I was like, all right, I'm gonna cast a little farther. And I went too far, and the tip of the line landed over top of it. And freaking smashed the tip of that line.
He ate the line.
He struck it, and I was pissed.
Oh.
That was the end of my day.
And that was it.
Yeah, it's like, all right, cool, man, thanks. I'm out of here. So you mentioned, how many times have you been in the Seychelles?
I think I've been 8 times.
No way, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a couple of times I've been for 2 weeks. Yeah. The only atoll I haven't been to, well, there's a couple more, Saint Francois and Poivre. I haven't been to those two, but I've been lucky enough to go to the others.
What draws you there? Because that's far.
That's what draws me. It's far.
Okay.
I think I've got a little bit of Mark Twain in my blood. He went around the world on a steamship and wrote that book, Following the Equator. And I've got a book in the works to some extent, if you could call it that. But some of us, if not all of us, I think something has to bring it out in you. But I definitely have a wandering gene, and I want to go to as far away from wherever I am as I can get and fish there. And the Seychelles has provided that. And I've every single person that's been there with me books again for next year.
Hmm. That's an interesting thing. I was just in Argentina 2 months ago, and almost every single person there was from Montana, Wyoming, or California.
Yeah, yeah, the Rocky
Basically,
Mountain West.
yeah, I mean, it's not that much different down there.
Well, we of course we're drawn to things we know, and it's not that much different down there.
Yeah, and
Um,
so, 2 days of travel, I did the math. I was on, if counting planes, it was 22 hours of moving vehicles each way to be in a
whew,
place that's pretty much like home, and everyone else was from the same, from either California, Montana, or Wyoming.
mm,
There's
but
some,
it is on the other side of the clock, and if you're a trout junkie,
yeah, that's
and we
true.
all are, if you can go there in January and it's summer.
But it's
It,
also, I think it's what you mentioned earlier too. It's like that wandering spirit. It's,
yeah,
I mean, you can't go farther than Argentina. You can't go. I mean, the Seychelles is that's the Seychelles is where people are like, "Hey, have we gone as far as we can go?" No, almost. Let's go a little farther. It's like,
let's go to the east side of Providence in the morning. And, oh, I know. Yeah, I the first trip I went over there was to St. Brandon's, and that would there's a bunch of stories that go along with that. But the most memorable moment I've had on one of those Seychelles trip, I was standing on the back of the Maya Dugong, the mothership that works Providence. At like 3 a.m., I had to take a leak real bad. And again, I love living on the ocean, and I love peeing in the ocean. So I climbed out of my rack and I found my way up the ladder and out into the back deck. And in the lights, there's sharks and there's GTs and there's bait fish. There's a lot of shit going on in the lights. And I kind of found myself transfixed and like looking at all these fish. And I sensed something behind me that really didn't belong. And I turned around and it was the security guard. It was the night watch. And he is armed to the teeth with tactical gear. So I turned around and looked at him and I said, you could have said good morning or something like that. I mean, thank God I had already peed because I would have peed my pants.
and
And he was the pirate watch.
yeah,
And he kind of explained that to me. And I thought, well, there's no way in hell I'm going to bed right now. So I went and made a pot of coffee and sat and drank coffee with him and watched the sun come up and heard his pirate stories. And I've never felt safer in my life than having that dude there.
wow. One of those
He had his
boats,
shit together.
one of those boats did get taken over by pirates.
That one.
Oh, was it that one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the anglers had just left, right?
Yeah. So
Oh yeah,
I had
the
asked
film's
the guy,
Providence. That's right.
yeah, it was on Providence.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what happened to these pirates? Like, do I or do my people need to be worried about this or anything? He said, no, it's fine. I said, well, what changed? He said, I started killing them.
Oh wow.
And he meant it. So like I said, I've never felt safer than having that fella around. So we drank a pot of coffee together.
It would have been funny if you're like, hey, should I be concerned about these pirates? And he'd be like, hell yeah, man. What are you guys doing here? Are you out of your minds?
You goofy Americans.
What's the matter with you?
What is wrong with you people to catch fish
Right.
that you don't even kill and eat? You just put them back.
Yeah. When you're in the Indian Ocean, is it permit that's on your mind, or is it the whole package?
Oh, that's a package deal over there, buddy. That's whatever's happened at the time. And so many of these fisheries that I've become addicted to, it's the diversity of them that brings me there. I of course love permit and I love GTs, but I like carrying 2 or 3 rods. One of the things I love about Espiritu Santo Bay, you better have 3 or 4 rods rigged with everything you need because you don't know what you're going to see next. It's probably going to be a permit, but every year, every trip, every week, And about every day, I'm grabbing another rod in a scramble because a 20-pound snook just cruised the mangrove, or
Huh.
here comes a 100-pound tarpon, something. And if you're not rigged and you don't have the gear and you're not ready, you don't even get the opportunity to cast at it. Normally, I blow the cast anyhow. According to Jorge, I'm terrible. So, but at least you can try and you're in the fight. And God, I love the diversity. So in the Seychelles, each atoll fishes a bit different. Largely, everybody's drawn there by the GTs. There's a permit on about all of those atolls. I've cast at them on every place I've been. The only place I've caught them was on St. Brandon's, which seems pretty permit friendly. If anybody wants to go do that and deal with the boat ride, I'm in. I'll happily go with you. It's the diversity. It's casting at fish that you can see that you may not have ever seen before in your life, like a Napoleon wrasse that comes up on the flats. This 40-pound, like, gargantuan gangster that's just going to break everything you have. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah.
So it's the diversity
I've
and the warm water and the rum, really.
I've fished Ascension Bay a couple of times, and I always had 3 rods rigged. Is the Espiritu Santo Bay different in the sense that you're more likely to run into different species?
Oh, I think both bays are pretty similar in that it can all happen. There's grand slams caught in both bays every day of the year, no question. Depending on the wind and the tide where you're fishing in each bay, certainly your odds are better of seeing a giant tarpon in front of Isla Shawl in the mouth of Espiritu Santo than in the back in one of the rivers. But I've seen them. They're in there. They come in there. Caught them. As a matter of fact, well, never landed them. They usually break me off because I'm a little aggressive. But you know, that's the beauty of saltwater fishing. You don't know what's going to happen next. This,
Yeah.
the last I was down at Casablanca 2 weeks ago with Jorge, and had a nice group of folks. In fact, the Mayfly group, the Able Reels and Airflow Lines guys. Well, I got to fish with my best friend Jorge for 5 days, and fishing was terrible. We had just intermittent clouds constantly, and the fish weren't happy. You'd see them and get the cast to them, and he's got me trained enough. I can pull pretty good downwind now. And God, we had both thrown it 15 or 20 fish and couldn't get one to commit or eat. And we're talking permit. And he's really as good as you make him. He's Will Flack in a Mexican body. And we got to shoot the shit. I said, well, let's go in the back country and go looking around. You know, maybe we'll find a permit in there. Maybe it'll actually bite, but we might find something else. He said, okay, let's go. So we tear off and get in some back lagoon of Ascension Bay, and I'm poling, and we threw it 2 or 3 fish that were cruising to a nervous water type of situation where you can't see the fish, but you can see them pushing water, and throw your fly 10 feet in front, 3 feet across, and sometimes they bite it. Well, we weren't having any luck. And all of a sudden, I see there's black in the water, and it's moving. It's black tails, and they're moving. And oh my God, I saw him before Jorge did. Like, I'm high-fiving myself on the platform. I said, hey man, do you see that at 11 o'clock, 80 feet? And he said, no, I don't see nothing. I said, well, just throw your fly over there. I don't see it now, but because now, boom, here comes a cloud. I said, there was a lot of something right there. So he throws in there and hooks about a 50-pound shark on a shrimp pattern.
Cool.
And it doesn't break off in the first run or the second run. We've got it. And now the sun comes out. There are 50 sharks surrounding the boat.
Wow.
Between 2 and like 6 feet long. All black tips, I think they were. And I looked at him. I said, do you want to try and land this thing? He said, it'd be a pretty good picture. I said, all right, we'll try and land it. And the shark came ripping past the bow of the boat. And I needed to spin the boat otherwise he was going to cut him off just running under the boat. Well, I planted Jorge's brand new push pole. He'd had it for like 2 days. I planted it on the stern, and the wind got me and was pushing down that push pole. And I took the jump. I did the Rodney Dangerfield triple windy off the platform so that I wouldn't break his push pole.
Nice.
And I know now that you should just let go of it and you go get it later. But honestly, I was really fucking excited, and I just jumped in. Well, I landed in 50 sharks. There's sharks everywhere. He looks at me, he says, I know you're not a big religious guy. This is a Mexican saying. He says, I know you're not a big religious guy, but you better start walking on water like Jesus. Of course, most of the sharks got scared because they're not used to a short, fat, white, bald dude falling in on top of them. But it was, that's why you go do that. You don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That made the week.
That's
little
amazing.
10-minute window
Yeah.
made the week.
That's cool.
And we did land the shark. I tailed that bastard, and keeping in mind that they can bite their tail, I got a good paw on his tail. And he whipped around to take a swat at me, and I kind of let go, and the 15-pound leader broke. So it was close. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, but as far as that shark's concerned, we had his ass.
Wow. Mexico and Belize are your go-tos. Why? There's other places to go for sure. I mean, you were just in Florida and you go elsewhere, but why? I'm looking at your schedule now. It's Belize, Mexico, 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 and I'm sure you'll add Belize several more times.
They're easy. Most people in the States can get there in a day. Travel's easy. It's secure. It seems to be very traveling angler oriented. And it kind of goes back to the relationships we touched on earlier. I go back and I bring my groups of folks back because I know the program at those places. Mm. When I show up at Playa Blanca, the lodge manager takes a break for a week, and I help with everything.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have it any other way. When I show up at Will Flax, Will just, I don't know if he just goes and tries to make more babies or what he does, but
man, I don't know if I can edit my laughter out of that
one. Will's like, Rooster's here, he caught it. And I love that about those people. And I, quite honestly, it's flattering and to have that amount of respect. And then your customers see that relationship. If you took that same situation to a new lodge that I hadn't been to, and I don't know the people, you're not going to have that dynamic. You might next time you go if you do it right and everything works out. But why do I go back to Mexico and Belize? Because those are my brothers. That's my. Why would I go permit fish anywhere else than with Jorge or Will Flack? They're the best, and they're on the best fisheries.
What I'm only hesitating because I'm reluctant to ask this question. Maybe you have to sign up to find out. But what is a hosted trip with Rooster all about?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. What isn't it all about? There's really no rules. Well, I'm building a new website now, and I'm working on the hosted travel part. And I reached out to a couple of my steady customers that fish around the world with me, and asked them. I felt kind of dirty asking them for a testimonial, but they're the kind of people, if you don't ask them, you'll never see it. And if you do, you get more than what you wanted. And a couple of lines in the two or three emails I got this morning rang true and were very similar in that through this lifestyle, this path that I've chosen, I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with the greatest people quite frankly, that I've ever met. The greatest people on earth. And for some reason, I have an innate ability to bring those folks together in a situation where everybody's on the same playing field. They all have their own businesses and lifestyles, but when you get to the beach at Playa Blanca, you're a permit fisherman, and they love it.
Mm.
They love it. So, what's a trip with me all about? I honestly don't think I think we're gonna have to call one of them and ask them. I really do. One thing I know is before you have a bad trip, I will. I don't, you see some of these folks that go on hosted trips, and in their pictures are all of them and with a fish, and who cares about that shit?
You mean the host himself or herself? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always marketed as like, hey, you get to be with me.
Yeah. You don't get to be with me. I'm going to fish with Jorge or Will every day. And 1 or 2 days of your trip, you're going to be with me and Jorge or Will. And that's when stars align. That's when the magic happens. And I think it does. And I might just be full of shit. I'm full of shit about most things, but I've seen it. I've watched it happen. And the dynamics of true professionals like Will and Jorge, and a half-ass like myself with a guy that really wants to play and really wants to get better. Then you start really watching guys cast improve and presenting the fly improve. And then there's the nighttime activities. I'm the last one to bed and the first one up in the morning. I bring a fly tying kit. Everybody that goes on a trip gets a box, and it might be 6, it might be a dozen, depending on how much time I've had. Everybody gets a box of flies that I tied for the week. And, you don't go through a lot of bugs, but those are ones that they've bit for me, and they work, and the guides like them. And I enjoy that. I enjoy being the guy that can put all that together. And then there's cocktail hours, and I love tending bar and getting the cornhole games fired up. And there's usually some sort of tournament every week, and I usually lose my ass in it because I bet too much, but everybody has fun. So what's a hosted trip with me about? It's mainly about fun. And sometimes the fishing's good. Usually it's average. A lot of times it's pretty slow. But boy, when it's good, it's great. And you have to be there to experience that. So I just feel each and every hosted trip I do, I feel more and more fortunate that I get to be the guy that's pouring the cocktails at night and maybe tied that fly that Justin Trail caught his permit of a lifetime on. So short of that, really the only thing I guarantee is a pretty float and a picnic.
Yeah. I imagine some people listening to this episode are dreaming of getting into fly fishing travel. Is there any advice you'd give somebody who's getting ready to embark?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't do it. Invest your money in like futures or something.
Yeah.
No, that's a joke. Advice to get into fly fishing travel: just do it. Just start going.
Yeah.
You can't host a trip or be the person that customers need you to be without having been to that lodge before, or knowing the guides, or knowing the manager, or knowing the bartender. Once you establish rapport with those 3 entities, now when you show up in your flip-flops and your white skin and your cowboy hat, they know you. So you have that going for you. You're not nervous about the crew. I've done some hosted trips to destinations that I've not been to, and quite honestly, it's the most nerve-wracking thing ever. Mm-hmm. You know where the cab drivers come from. You don't know where to get dinner. You don't know where to buy weed for the guys in town. It seems like it's always something. So spend a little bit of your own money and go and get to know people first, or else you're going to find yourself in a situation where let's face it, we all have anxiety and we're nervous enough about keeping customers happy. And you don't need to not know the program. That, we control the things we can control in this business, the weather and the fish not being two of them. I can control how Jorge's going to treat you at dinner and how Will's going to laugh at everybody's jokes and Magic Mike's going to tie flies with me. I know what's going to happen. That gives you a bit of a security blanket, because as a customer, as a guest, those are fascinating times. And you spent your money to be with, in and amongst true professionals. And if you can facilitate that by default, you look good. And I need all the fucking help I can get to look good when I'm doing that sort of thing. I'm not sure that really made any sense.
No, that was good, and that's great advice too. Is to just go. It reminded me of a quote from Yvon Chouinard, and I'm not getting the quote right, but he's saying that people have asked him what books to read and films to watch, and he said there's no substitute for just going. And just going is not that hard to do sometimes. There's trips where I think it was my first trip to Montana. I decided 2 or 3 hours before I left.
Really?
Yeah. And actually, I'm glad I thought of that. I got a DM from a woman once on Facebook, and I don't know why, but she's like, "Hey, I've got some stuff going on in my life, and I feel like I need to go to Montana." And I just go. It's not that hard. Just go. People make it out to be harder than it is. I've met people who kind of are like jealous or something, like that I've gone to Argentina a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Argentina, like, it's a plane ticket. You've been to Disneyland. That is some logistics right there. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Bring a family to Disneyland. If you can pull that off, you can go permit fishing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's coming down the choices right there, because that is expensive and logistically difficult.
Right? Yeah. And at Disneyland, nobody cares about you when you get there. When you get to like the Belize Permit Club, Prudence she's making your breakfast for you.
Right.
You don't have to leave the
That's
building
true.
and you get delicious food.
And Belize Permit Club doesn't have a jail.
No, there's one in Hopkins, though. I saw it. I didn't get thrown in it, but I did see it.
But Disneyland's got a jail.
Disneyland has jail?
I think so.
See, that's why I've never been there. I don't. Rule number one in life is you don't want to go to jail.
I'm going to pull Joe Rogan and just Google it.
You don't have a staff there Googling stuff for
you? I think they have a jail. Well, both. This is from magicalguides.com.
I just spit Moscow Mule through my nose.
By the way, another story I thought of, and I'm talking a lot more than I normally do. I don't know what's gotten in.
That's good. You should talk. You're smarter than most of us.
Well, anyway, I was on. Actually, I don't know what river I was on because he wouldn't tell me, and that's the truth. I was with Justin Miller from the Fly Shop up in Northern California, and he wouldn't tell me what river we were on because he was afraid I was going to hotspot it, which I do not have a record of.
Well, that's what all you internet podcasters do, is blow up our fisheries.
So he told me what the name of the river was, and then I heard him tell somebody else a different name. So I still don't know. But anyway, he had this actually, this person might be listening, but he had a client with him, and there's a nice guy who brought a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle. Is that the whiskey?
Yeah, that's that fancy bourbon, you bet.
Yeah, and like bourbon. It's really hard to find, and
mm-hmm.
a big story behind that. But Justin being Justin, Every time he took a sip, he poured a sip in the river for the steel.
He did.
Yeah. And both me and the guy who gave him the bottle were just like, "Oh my god, is this really happening?" But that's him. I don't know what made me think of, and it was about hosted trips, I guess. But what made you losing a little bourbon on that made me, or whiskey on that made me think of that story.
The other thing when you asked about what's a hosted trip with Rooster about, and I'm not the only one. There's several of me out there. Mike Dawes, Jim Klug. There's some people that really know how to book trips. When you find yourself on a trip with someone that's done the homework and has been there and has talked to the guides and they booked the right tides, there's no substitute for timing and location. For example, I booked the trip to Cosmolito this past March 3 years ago based on the tides.
Wow.
We set the record for number of GTs landed in the last 2 years during that week.
Okay.
It's all tides, and it doesn't hurt if you bring a little talent with you. I had some pretty good fishermen in that group. So booking a trip with a host, whether whoever it might be, I think as a customer that's listening to this podcast, first of all, I apologize because this is like an episode of ADD gone wild. But secondly, ask a lot of questions. Talk to your quote unquote host, whoever you're going to arrange this yearly, once in a lifetime trip with, and make sure they know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because sometimes people want to host and they get a leftover week that they have to try to fill. And
bingo. And now you get your host spot free, and maybe you can bring somebody else with you or whatever you want to do. And it's on it's on the wrong moon phase, or the tides are wrong, or it's early February and the north winds are blowing, or
pirates everywhere.
Could be pirates. I mean, you just never know. Ask a lot of questions.
Skunk ape.
Before you start writing checks, ask questions, get answers. Make sure you're excited to go. I ran into classic example. I was sitting in the bar in at the airport Marriott in Cancun last month with my group, and we all kind of just traveled in, within 2 or 3 hours of each other, and some of us had a few more tequilas than others, but all of a sudden there's like 4 or 5 people that I don't know, and they act like they're in my group. I think, well, how is this even possible? We're all at the bar, we're getting along, and I'm counting 12. I have my 12, and surely I didn't book 16 or 18. So I walk up to one of the fellows and I said, I got to be honest with you, I don't have any idea who you are. And I said, stuck my paw out and I said, I'm Rooster. And he said, well, I'm Joe something or other from wherever he was from, and we're meeting Yako Lucas in the morning. I said, you're kidding. So I called Yako. I got him on FaceTime, and boom, I took care of Yako's people all night. I carried one of them to bed. He kind of got overserved a little bit.
That's great.
Yako trusts me, and I would do the same for him, or he'd do the same for me. The Yako Lucas is a well-traveled. You can trust him. You need a favor, you call him in the fishing world. He didn't just fall off the turnip truck and say he's going to start hosting trips. He went and did a lot of stuff and learned it and knew it and owns it. And, that to me, that was flattering. That these guys, they're like, oh shit, you're Rooster. And one of my customers is like, is there any other short ball dudes that look like him down here right now? No. So ask a lot of questions. Make sure you know who you're traveling with. Make sure they've been there once, maybe twice. You start going on hosted trips with guys that have been to lodges 6, 8, 10, 15 times. you're spending your money in a good place. The lodge, I can break it down in three ways. One, the lodge loves hosted trips. They have their staff can relax. The host is going to take care of all the interactions between the guides and the customers. The customers now they have an industry professional at their disposal. You need leaders tied, knots tied, re-rigged. Oh, I'm sorry that your local fly shop put your backing on the wrong direction. Let's fix that. I've seen it all. Oh, and by the way, here's 6 of Jorge's crabs, and slide him a couple $100 because you can't buy these anywhere, but they eat them. All that stuff comes together. And third, as the host, once you seal the deal and you've got a group that loves to travel with you and they have some good fishing, bad fishing, eventually in a week's time, somebody catches a few fish. You get that week back next year.
Yeah.
Now you've got money in the bank. Now you can sell it. And you do. We make a commission off of it. It's work. And anybody that acts like it's not work is a bold-faced liar, or they're not doing it right. I come home from a hosted trip and have to sleep for 5 days.
People ask me all the time why I don't host trips. Especially with the podcast and everything, it should be easy to do. I don't have the energy for that. I'm an introvert, and I know what a good hosted trip means, and I can't do it. Watch later, I'll change my mind and start doing it, and someone's going to listen to this and be like, wow, he's...
Right?
But
we'd kind of like to go with you, Tim. Rooster sounds like a psychopath.
No, but I know what it means to be a good host. I can't do it. And I want, and people who go on a trip like that deserve someone who's not so introverted that they're not going to know where he is.
Yeah, I heard one story, and we're not going to bring any names up. I heard one story from a customer that went on a hosted trip with somebody in the industry, and kind of one of the Insta famous people. Out comes the flies. We're going permit fishing. Here's some flies that another person on Instagram had sent in. These are my favorite flies. I've tied them for you. Finally, somebody gets a permit to bite, and the hook broke in half because they were tied on garbage hooks.
Right.
That sort of thing just simply cannot happen. It's unacceptable.
No, exactly. Especially with the financial and time investment that goes into these. You mentioned Jim Klug earlier, and I was listening to his recent podcast with John Hudgens, and travel came up, and one of the points that Klug really emphasized was, for many, the time that goes into these trips is more valuable than the money. And
absolutely,
that's where a good host comes in for sure.
Yeah, he or she can maximize your, cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll toot my own horn. You're going to have a great time and learn a lot about saltwater fishing on a boat with Will and I, or Jorge and I, or Jose and I, or whoever the guide might be. You're going to get more than you bargained for when you consider just booking your own trip to a lodge or any of the other alternatives. And for that reason, I guess I'm happy to bring new folks on if I can get a spot for a new couple people to come on a trip.
I've got
the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah. I've got one more question for you since we've been so saltwater focused. I fly fished for a long time. Is that true? I fly fished for a while before I felt like I was good enough, if you will, to go saltwater fly fishing. And then on that trip, I was nervous that, I was going to get exposed or something for not having inadequate skills. I think people might be deterred from the salt in ways that they ought not to be. What advice would you give to people who are interested in wading into saltwater, if you will, for the first time?
You know what? You kind of cut out on me there for a second.
You cut out on me too.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Where was I?
I think I caught like 20 seconds, but it was the first 20 seconds.
Did I talk that long? Okay. I think a lot of people are afraid to get into saltwater fishing because they think that their skills aren't there yet. And I think that is often incorrect. What advice would you give to people who are really, really interested in getting into saltwater, but think that they're not ready?
There's only one way to learn it, and that's to go do it.
Yeah.
You can't practice saltwater on your pond at home or on your river. Shameless self-promotion. Hudge and I are going to do a saltwater school this year with Will Flack. I mean, what a great opportunity to either cut your teeth on it or up your game. More on that, in the future once we work the details out. Go and do it. The guides are used to people that can't do it. You're not going to get good at it. You're not going to know what you need to be capable of without seeing it happen. So there's a bit of investment. There's a bit of a learning curve. Well, until you start the learning curve, you don't learn.
Yeah, and I would say that on every saltwater trip I've been on, there are opportunities for people who aren't very good to get good shots at fish.
Yeah, you can go catch some bonefish. You can throw out some baby tarpon. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You're not going to go out to the reef with Will on your first trip and throw into the wind 50, 60 feet at these fish on rays that aren't going to bite anyhow and listen to him scream at you.
But you can get some jacks and some bonefish and have a ball.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, the question asking, the communication, it's what drives our world. It drives our industry. Talk to your host, talk to the lodge, talk to the guides, talk to the booking agent. Just be realistic with yourself and with them about your expectations. Guides and outfitters can work with anything if we have clear expectations.
Excellent. I think he hung up. I don't know what's happening at the end of this podcast, but I might just leave this in because it's comical. Let's give him a call back.
This is Rooster. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me a voicemail or shoot me a text, and I'll get back with you as soon as I can.
Hey, Rooster, this is Tim Harden from the Venturing Angler Podcast. Just wanted to end this podcast with you, and I think I'll do it here over your voicemail. For those who want to learn more about Rooster, his hosted trips, his travel, and his guide service. Oh, it's him. Let's answer. Hey, Rooster, it's Tim.
Yeah, there was a glitch in the matrix there or something.
Well, we were just closing out the episode on your voicemail.
Oh boy.
For those who want to learn more about you and your hosted trips and your guide service and everything, where should people go?
Stoneflyoutfitters.com.
And then what about on social media?
Stonefly Outfitters. Not hard to find. You know what? I haven't passed out business cards in years, and I just tell folks, you know what? If you type in Rooster, Montana in Google, you're going to find what you're looking for.
Oh, good. There you go. Well, good. Thanks for coming on. Let's do this again sometime, and I had a good time.
Anytime, Tim. Great talking with you. My Moscow Mule just ran out, and the local bartender has not freshened it up for me, so I think I'm going to go make another one and burn some steaks on the grill.
Enjoy.
Have a good night, Tim. Thank you, bud.